I'm attorney Pat Dunn. Auto accidents are a part of life. I hope you never need an attorney, but if you do, the team at the Mack Law Firm is here to help. Don't be intimidated by large insurance companies who just want to make your problem go away. We are here to represent your rights and interests. Contact me today at tangilawteam.com and let's get to work.
All right, call the public hearing to order for June the 14th. First item is TP Ordinance 2133, an ordinance to acquire ownership of right-of-ways, Sisters Road Bridge Replacement Project in Ponchatoula. Anyone here to speak on that item? The next item is TP Ordinance 2134, an ordinance to grant a variance to ordinance number 97-25, adoption of state sanitary code for Al and Harrell at 15432 West Murray Street in Ponchatoula. Anyone to speak on that? The third one is TP Ordinance 2135, an ordinance placing a four-way stop sign at the intersection of Fire Tower and Harvey Levine Road in District 2. Anyone for that? The next one is Ordinance 2131. It's an ordinance amending Chapter 20, Section 2013, installation and construction of driveways, culverts, etc., and Section 2020, Parish roadside ditches in regards to subsurface drainage. Anyone to speak on that item? The last one is TP Ordinance 2137, an ordinance to grant a variance to TP Ordinance number 2019, Tangipahoa Parish Code of Ordinances, Chapter 17-4.1C, setbacks for Eric Hager at 10169 Lawrence Road in Hammond. Anyone to speak on that? If not, we'll close public hearing and call our regular meeting to order. We'll have our invocation by Mr. Lewis Joseph and pledge by Mr. Buddy Richtel.
Bow our heads. Heavenly Father, we thank you for the many blessings we've received. Thank you for our health. Thank you for our strength. Thank you for our peace of mind. And we thank you for our families and our friends. We thank you for allowing this gathering tonight, Lord. Bless this meeting. Give our chairwoman, parish president, leadership, all the wisdom, the knowledge, and understanding to make those decisions that are pleasing in your eyesight. Lord, we ask that you bless all those who place themselves in harm's way so that we may enjoy the freedoms we enjoy today, such as our military personnel, our police officers, first responders, medical personnel, all those people who run toward dangers out of their country. And Lord, if you lead this place from every place, right, for safe guidance back to our various homes and our families, these blessings and all blessings. We ask in the God and Son, Jesus Christ's name, and all of the saints within the sound of my voice respond by saying, Amen.
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 Veterans and active military render a proper salute. Pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right. Roll call, please. Mr. Forrest. Mr. Graffia. Mr. Joseph. Mr. Bruno.
Here.
Mr. Richtel.
Here.
Mr. Mayu.
Here.
Mr. Wells.
Here.
Mr. Viel. Ms. Hyde.
Here.
Ms. Coates. All right. If you have a cell phone, please mute it or turn it off at this time. If everyone's had a chance to read over the minutes that were emailed to you, I'll entertain a motion we accept.
I move that we adopt the minutes, Madam Chairman.
I'll second.
All right. We have a motion by Mr. Wells, second by Mr. Joseph. Roll call, please. Mr. Forrest. Mr. Joseph.
Yes.
Mr. Bruno. Mr. Richtel.
Yes.
Mr. Mayu.
Yes.
Mr. Wells.
Yes.
Mr. Viel.
Yes.
Ms. Hyde.
Yes.
Ms. Coates.
Yes.
All right, public input. Does anyone want to address an item that was not heard on public hearing that's on the agenda? We'll move on to our parish president's report.
Good evening.
Good
Here
evening.
are a few items to cover. So get right to it. The first item is to declare asset surplus and sell for scrap. It's a 16-foot trailer that's basically we prepared all we can. It's rusting and falling apart and needs to go to the scrap yard. Asset number 2156
Second.
All right, we have a motion by Mr. Mayhew, second by Mr. Ridgel. Roll call, please.
Mr. Forrest? Mr. Joseph?
Yes.
Mr. Bruno? Mr. Ridgel?
Yes.
Mr. Mayhew? Mr. Wells?
Yes.
Mr. Vial? Ms. Hyde?
Yes.
Ms. Coates?
Thank you. We have approval of bids for vending machines in parish buildings. There was only one bidder, Brennan Vendor Works, and TPG basically gets 8% of the sales. Prices are set in your, in the package you have there. Locations will be wherever the existing machines are, and if anybody would like to add them, for instance, Juvenile Detention Center wants to add them. So we'll do that for us.
We get 8 or he gets 8?
The way I read it is we get 8. It's in there.
That's the move, Madam Chair.
All right, we have a motion by Mr. Wells, second by Ms. Coates. Roll call, please.
Mr. Joseph?
Yes.
Mr. Bruno? Mr. Ridgel?
Yes.
Mr. Mayhew? Mr. Wells?
Yes.
Mr. Vial? Ms. Hyde?
Yes.
Ms. Coates? Mr. Forrest?
Yes. Thank you. The third item is approval of bid for the Velma Sewer System Improvement Project. This is the grant that Mr. Joseph worked so hard on to get. Mitchell Contracting of Madisonville was the low bidder of $1,122,620. We are asking for that approval. There is a deduction if we don't do some work that still keeps them as the low bidder, and it drops to about $930,000, but there needs to be some discussion about that. So we want to get it approved at the $1,122,000, or accepted at the $1,122,620.
I'll second.
All right, have a motion by Mr. Joseph, second by Mr. Vial. Roll call, please.
Mr. Bruno? Mr. Ridgel?
Yes.
Mr. Mayhew?
Yes.
Mr. Wells?
Yes.
Mr. Vial? Mr. Hyde? Sorry, Ms. Hyde?
Yes.
Ms. Coates? Mr. Forrest? Mr. Joseph?
Yes.
Thank you. At this point, I think because of the order of the agenda, there's an addition to the agenda that we need to ask for. It's a change order for the safe room in Hammond. The reason to put it now is because the next item will be to accept the substantial completion of the safe room. But it's a change order for $649 for some exterior lighting that we added. Just for clarification, all change orders on this project were $6,656, including this $649 on a project that was $747,000. So it's very small. We did it, I think, between architect and contractor and parish government, done a very good job to keep that project in line. So I think y'all need to add it to the agenda by unanimous and then vote on it, if you don't mind, on the change order.
Second.
All right, we have a motion by Mr. Vial, second by Mr. Mayhew to add it to the agenda. Roll call, please.
Mr. Ridgel?
Yes.
Mr. Mayhew?
Yes.
Mr. Wells?
Yes.
Mr. Vial? Ms. Hyde?
Yes.
Ms. Coates? Mr. Forrest? Mr. Joseph?
Yes.
Mr. Bruno?
So now we'll ask you to accept the change order number 3 in the amount of $649 for the exterior lighting of the Hammond Safe House. Safe room.
Second.
All right, we have a motion by Mr. Vial, second by Mr. Forrest. Roll call, please.
Mr. Mayhew?
Yes.
Mr. Wells?
Yes.
Mr. Vial? Ms. Hyde?
Yes.
Ms. Coates? Mr. Forrest? Mr. Joseph?
Yes.
Mr. Bruno? Mr. Ridgel?
Yes.
Thank you. And now the approval of substantial completion for the Hammond HMGP safe room.
Second.
We have a motion by Mr. Vial, second by Mr. Wells. Roll call, please.
Mr. Wells?
Yes.
Mr. Vial? Ms. Hyde?
Yes.
Ms. Coates? Mr. Forrest? Mr. Joseph?
Yes.
Mr. Bruno? Mr. Ridgel? Mr. Mayhew?
Yes.
Thank you. And then lastly, approval of a cooperative endeavor agreement between D.R. Horton Gulf Coast and Tangipahoa Parish Government for road repairs of Sibley Road and Southern Pine Subdivision in the amount of $170,713.78. They're assisting to repair roads that were damaged most recent construction of that, in that subdivision.
Second.
Now the parish will do the work and just
Yes.
reimburse. Okay.
All right, we have a motion by Ms. Coates, second by Mr. Wells. Roll call, please.
Mr. Vial?
Yes.
Ms. Hyde?
Yes.
Ms. Coates? Mr. Forrest? Mr. Joseph?
Yes.
Mr. Bruno? Mr. Ridgel?
Yes.
Mr. Mayhew?
Yes.
Mr. Wells?
Yes.
Thank you. The only note I have would be that we will be scheduling a ribbon cutting for the Hammond safe room, so be on the lookout for that. It probably won't be for a couple of weeks at least, but we will be setting that up, so we can all go take a look at that.
I want a question, just to come in, while we're on the air. We are in hurricane season, would you just remind all the people that's being...
Sure, the best thing you can do is go to tangipahoa.org, go to Hurricane Tower Emergency Management, there's a get a plan, game plan list to help you prepare. There is a storm down in the Gulf of Campeche right now, down way close to Mexico. Currently, they're saying if it gets to us, it'll be late in the week, it'll be a rainy event. They don't expect it to turn into anything too dramatic. And people should sign up for Tangi Alert. You can go to our website, tangipahoa.org again. It's right there on the front of the page. Just sign up for alerts so you can get text messages, emails, or voice calls regarding any emergencies, special announcements that we're making about those storms and so forth. But the big thing is be prepared now because they can show up quickly.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, sir.
Were we supposed to do anything for the property, for the water district, for the water?
That's coming up. It's an ordinance further down the list. Yes, sir.
Thank you, Robbie. All right, our first item under regular business is Hospital Service District Number 2, Hood Memorial, request for millage renewal election.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Jim Ryan, Government Consultants. I'm Mr. Whittington of this is the CLC board. This is just a renewal of an existing 5-year property tax. We'll be back on your July 12th agenda with a resolution to allow the proposition of that.
Mr. Joseph. I'll second. All right, I have a motion by Mr. Joseph, second by Ms. Coates. Roll call, please.
Mr. Forrest?
Yes.
Mr. Joseph?
Yes.
Mr. Bruno? Mr. Ridgel?
Yes.
Mr. Mayu?
Yes.
Mr. Wells?
Yes.
Mr. Vial?
Yes.
Ms. Hyde?
Yes.
Ms. Coates?
Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Thank you. All right. Next item is adoption of TP Ordinance 2133, an ordinance to acquire ownership right-of-ways, Sisters Road Bridge Replacement Project. That's in my district, if someone would make that motion for me.
Also moved.
Right.
All right. Motion by Mr. VL, second by Mr. Wells. Roll call, please.
Mr. Forrest? Mr. Joseph?
Yes.
Mr. Bruno?
Yes.
Mr. Ridgel?
Yes.
Mr. Mayu?
Yes.
Mr. Wells?
Yes.
Mr. Vial?
Yes.
Ms. Hyde?
Yes.
Ms. Coates?
All right. Next item is adoption of TP Ordinance 2134, an ordinance to grant a variance to Ordinance Number 97-25, adoption of State Sanitary Code for Allen Harrell.
That's my district, I'll make that motion.
Second.
So we have a motion by Ms. Coates, second by Mr. Mayu. Roll call, please.
Mr. Joseph?
Yes.
Mr. Bruno? Mr. Ridgel?
Yes.
Mr. Mayu? Mr. Wells?
Yes.
Mr. Vial?
Yes.
Ms. Hyde?
Yes.
Ms. Coates?
Yes.
Mr. Forrest?
All right. Our next item is adoption of TP Ordinance 2135, an ordinance placing a four-way stop sign at the intersection of Fire Tower Road and Harvey Levine Road in District 2.
Also move, Mr. Brad is not here now, he's the old, he said he ran to the engineering department, so I'll make a motion for him. I'll say.
All right. We have a motion by Mr. VL, second by Mr. Forrest. Roll call, please.
Mr. Bruno? Mr. Ridgel?
Yes.
Mr. Mayu?
Yes.
Mr. Wells?
Yes.
Mr. Vial?
Yes.
Ms. Hyde?
Yes.
Ms. Coates? Mr. Forrest? Mr. Joseph?
Yes.
Next item is adoption of TP Ordinance 2136, an ordinance amending Chapter 20, Section 2013, installation and construction of driveways, culverts, etc., and Section 2020, parish roadside ditches. This is in regards to subsurface drainage.
Also move.
I had a question. There was one item in there, and it says the minimum culvert diameter installed shall be determined upon the initial inspection by the parish road supervisor. Shouldn't that be by the engineer?
Well, sometimes they don't go out. Sometimes the supervisor goes out.
Wesley will go and,
But I mean,
It'd be hard for him to cover all those costs.
well, he's not doing much.
Ben, will you go over those and review them? before they're approved, or?
I'm not saying somebody's not, but once you put it down, it's down.
I've actually not decided to do it. That's something that goes through a permit department without put it down, that's size by one. Now, the subsurface drainage, that's something that I keep a close eye on.
Okay. So when these would come through, you would review them before?
Oh, yes, sir.
Okay. But there's if it's just a regular culvert, it can always be dug up and reset, but once you put subsurface down, it's down.
That's it.
So,
Unless it's not a problem.
yeah, you're right. That was my only
And then they're
question.
coming out.
Yeah, okay.
Okay. Roll call, please.
Mr. Richardson?
Yes.
Mr. Mayu?
Yes.
Mr. Wells?
Yes.
Mr. Vial?
Yes.
Ms. Hyde?
Yes.
Ms. Coates?
Yes.
Mr. Forrest? Mr. Joseph?
Yes.
Mr. Bruno?
Yeah.
All right, item 11, adoption of TP Ordinance 2137, an ordinance to grant a variance to TP Ordinance 2019. This is setbacks for Eric Hager at 10169 Lawrence Road in Hammond.
I'll make that motion.
Good Lord, girl, how many variances you gonna have?
I'll second.
I have a motion by Ms. Coates, second by Mr. Wells. Roll call, please.
Mr. Mayu?
Yes.
Mr. Wells?
Yes.
Mr. Vial?
Yes.
Ms. Hyde?
Yes.
Ms. Coates?
Yes.
Mr. Forrest? Mr. Joseph?
Yes.
Mr. Bruno?
Yeah.
Mr. Richardson?
Yes.
All right. Next item is introduction of TP Ordinance 2138, an ordinance placing 15-mile-an-hour speed limit signs and drive like your kids live here signs on Foss Lane in District 6.
That's mine, I'll make that motion.
I'll second.
All right, we got a motion by Mr. Mayu, second by Mr. Wells. Roll call, please.
Mr. Wells?
Yes.
Mr. Vial?
Yes.
Ms. Hyde?
Yes.
Ms. Coates?
Yes.
Mr. Forrest? Mr. Joseph? Mr. Bruno? Mr. Richardson?
Yes.
Mr. Mayu?
Introduction of TP Ordinance 2139, an ordinance placing 20-mile-an-hour speed limit signs on West Charles Avenue in District 4.
That's a matter. That's a matter.
I'll second.
All right, motion by Mr. Bruno, second by Mr. Joseph. Roll call, please.
Mr. Vial?
Yes.
Ms. Hyde?
Yes.
Ms. Coates?
Yes.
Mr. Forrest? Mr. Joseph?
Yes.
Mr. Bruno? Mr. Richardson?
Yes.
Mr. Mayu?
Yes.
Mr. Wells?
Yes.
Mr. President, there's a north and a south central. This is only the little piece that connects.
All right. Item 15 is introduction of TP Ordinance 2141. This is an ordinance placing a three-way stop sign at the intersection of Twin Lakes Boulevard and Howe Sanitary Road in District 9. That's actually mine. I have a recommendation from our parish engineer that those be placed there. If somebody will make that motion for me.
So moved.
All right. We have a motion by Mr. Vial, second by Ms. Coates. Roll call, please.
Ms. Coates?
Yes.
Mr. Forrest? Mr. Joseph?
Yes.
Mr. Bruno? Mr. Richardson?
Yes.
Mr. Mayu?
Yes.
Mr. Wells?
Yes.
Mr. Vial?
Yes.
Ms. Hyde?
Yes. All right, the next one is introduction of TP Ordinance 2141, which is an ordinance, I'm sorry, did I do that one? Yeah. 2142, an ordinance to authorize a cooperative endeavor agreement by and between the Tangipahoa Parish Council, President, Government, and the Tangipahoa Water District. Robbie?
We skipped one, the orange.
Okay. I thought I did. All right.
I thought
I
I saw
got,
it twice on here.
That's what I thought. I thought you had it twice.
no, I have two different ones. Okay, let's go back to,
2139,
let's go back to 15.
2140.
All right, so 15 is ordinance 2141, which is a three-way stop sign. I got them mixed up. Okay, so 2140 is the intersection of Arnold Road, West Sam Arnold Road, and South Sam Arnold Loop. That's also mine, and I have a letter from Ben on that one as well. Ben's earning his keep tonight. Does somebody will make
Also
that
moved.
motion for me? All right.
Second.
So, Mr. Richdell, second by Mr. Mayu.
Yes.
Roll
Yes.
call, please.
Mr. Forrest? Mr. Joseph?
Yes.
Mr. Bruno? Mr. Richardson?
Yes.
Mr. Mayu?
Yes.
Mr. Wells?
Yes.
Mr. Vial?
Yes.
Ms. Hyde?
Yes.
Ms. Coates?
All right. Robbie, did you want to, the water district,
We got another one, 2140, ain't you?
I did 41 and then I went back and did 40.
So we're now at 42.
That's
Yes.
we're on the water district.
Yes.
We, parish government owns 30 or so acres on Highway 40 west of the interstate. And the water district will be beneficial to add a tower there. And so we're going to enter into an agreement for them to have a long-term lease on, I don't know exactly the amount, roughly an acre or so, acre and a half to be able to put that water tower there. So we think it's, it's good for that section. They need it over there. The whole parish needs it. So we're just want to enter into that agreement with them to be able to use that property.
I so moved. We've been looking for a location for that for quite a while. Thought it was going to be at the recreation district, but it's not centrally enough located, and this piece of property will give access to the Highway 40 area that the water pressure situation is in a little bit of an uprising, so this would be a really good place for it, so I'll make that motion.
All right, I have a motion by Mr. Bruno, second by Mr. Joseph. Roll call, please.
Mr. Joseph?
Yes.
Mr. Bruno?
Yes.
Mr. Ridgel?
Yes.
Mr. Mayu?
Yes.
Mr. Wells?
Yes.
Mr. Vial?
Yes.
Ms. Hyde?
Yes.
Ms. Coates? Mr. Forrest?
All right, introduction of TP Ordinance 2143, an ordinance to grant a variance to Tangipahoa Parish Code of Ordinances, Chapter 17, Section 17, 4.2, minor subdivisions for Mr. Ronnie Sharp at 12150 Old Covington Highway in Independence. I'm sorry, Old Highway 40. No.
Madam Chairman, I'd like to make, I visited the site, it's right down the street from my house, actually. I had moved to St.
What's that?
I had moved to St.
Old Covington Highway is in Tangipahoa Parish.
Moved all the way to St.
What is the variance here?
It's a little small, two little second houses on it. He wants to try to sell them, so he's trying to divide. And the staff and I went down, they recommend approval without reservations.
I'll second.
Okay.
You're not going to give him a hard time about the variance? All right, roll call, please.
Mr. Bruno?
Yes.
Mr. Ridgel?
Yeah.
Mr. Mayu?
Yes.
Mr. Wells?
Yes.
Mr. Vial?
Yes.
Ms. Hyde?
Yes.
Ms. Coates? Mr. Forrest? Mr. Joseph?
Yes.
All right, the next one is TP Ordinance 2144, an ordinance to grant a variance to Tangipahoa Parish Code of Ordinances, Chapter 17. This is Section 17, 4.2A, to allow to create a 2-acre air petition with only one track having the required 125 feet road frontage for Mr. Robert Parrott at 15069 Shelley Road in Natalbany.
This is me and Carlos, actually. I think he talked to you as much as he did me, so I so moved.
Well, he votes for you, and the problem's in my area.
Carlos second.
You want to make it?
He did.
He made the motion?
Yeah. Okay. Right, motion by Mr. Ridgel, second by Mr. Bruno. Roll call, please.
Mr. Ridgel?
Yes.
Mr. Mayu?
Yes.
Mr. Wells?
Yes.
Mr. Vial?
Yes.
Ms. Hyde?
Yes.
Ms. Coates? Mr. Forrest? Mr. Joseph?
Yes.
Mr. Bruno?
Yes.
All right, I have one we need to add. It's a speed limit. Tangipahoa Parish Ordinance 2145. This is another introduction. 25-mile-an-hour speed limit signs and drive like your kids live here signs on Chapman Road in District 8. Somebody,
I'm going to amend that. I got the call, went to put speed limit signs up, there's nothing on the books. So until we put this in place, they won't, and I hate to wait 6 months.
yes, sir.
I'd like to amend. Second.
All right. I have a motion to amend the agenda to add this by Mr. VL, second by Mr. Forrest. Roll call, please.
Mr. Wells?
Yes.
Mr. Vial?
Yes.
Ms. Hyde?
Yes.
Ms. Coates? Mr. Forrest? Mr. Joseph?
Yes.
Mr. Bruno? Mr. Ridgel?
Yes.
Mr. Mayu?
Yes.
All right. And
I
Mr.
move we introduce the ordinance.
All right. I have a motion by Mr. VL, second by Ms. Coates. Roll call, please.
Mr. Vial?
Yes.
Ms. Hyde?
Yes.
Ms. Coates? Mr. Forrest? Mr. Joseph?
Yes.
Mr. Ridgel?
Yes.
Mr. Mayhew?
Yes.
Mr. Wells?
Yes.
Okay, item 19, adoption of a resolution R21-11, a resolution approving the issuance of not exceeding $180 million of Hospital Service District Number 1. This is a refunding bond, North Oaks Health System project.
Also move.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes,
Madam Chairman, I would, like to, did he get a second?
no.
So I would just like to ask if he would, include in that the review by our bonding attorney,
Be reviewed by who?
the bonding attorney for the parish.
Okay, so we have a motion by Mr. Ridgel. Mr. Wells is asking that we add to that, that
Be
we,
reviewed?
it be reviewed by our,
I don't know.
our financial
I have no
advisor.
problem with that.
Okay. So we're going to make the motion contingent on him?
Yes.
Okay.
Can you repeat that, Mr. Bruno? Was that?
Yes, Mr. Ridgel made a motion to approve the North Oaks rebonding, and Mr. Wells asked that he add to his motion that we have our financial advisor review it. It'll be contingent on that.
There won't be any cost, extra cost? to
No.
the hospital?
No.
Shouldn't be.
I need a second.
Yeah.
Your second,
Well, Buddy made it, so I'll say.
okay. All right, so we have a motion by Mr. Ridgel, second by Mr. Wells. Roll call, please.
Mr. Mayhew?
Yes.
Mr. Wells?
Yeah.
Mr. Vial?
Yes.
Ms. Hyde?
Yes.
Ms. Coates? Mr. Forrest? Mr. Joseph?
Yes.
Mr. Bruno?
Yes.
Mr. Ridgel?
Yes.
I said one question. Cost savings here? I'm just, amount of cost savings, I mean, probably lower interest rates. Yeah. Just, do we have a number? Just curious.
We're estimating that the cost savings on the annual debt service be at least 1.5 million plus per year.
Yeah, that's what he said.
That's awesome.
I got a couple of things. One, and we're not borrowing anymore. This is just to cover the bonds that are existing.
Absolutely.
So
There's no new money at all. This is
That's
just a
one of
refunding.
that's one of the questions that I've had asked of them. So just so the public knows, this is not any additional money. It's only covering what the outstanding bonds are. And then the second thing, and this is probably not the place to discuss it, but we need to get a clarification on this, is on this bonding situation. Hopefully, by the time we have to do this again, we need to get clarification. If, the situation has to be done the way we're doing it. Because if we do, then we do. If we don't, then we don't. But I know it's causing some difference of opinion, and I'd like to see us figure it out, what we need to do with this. So I guess, Robbie, that really falls under your office, and maybe a recommendation from you, or maybe working with the council on what we need to do with this situation.
I understand what you're trying to get to. I was, the implication I have is, the impression I got that it was the council's choice. We worked within the council's choice.
But it's my understanding it was a resolution, is that correct? It was never an order.
I was giving my time, so I would.
It's a resolution.
It was a resolution, and in fact, it was adopted in 2018. We had a similar situation then, so we adopted a resolution. It was not an ordinance.
So maybe what we need to do, if the council feels comfortable in this situation, really the resolution doesn't hold any weight of like an ordinance does. So I think the council needs to look at it. If we want to do this and we want it to hold the weight that it's supposed to, we may need to look at doing this as an ordinance.
All right, Madam Chairman, since it's a financial matter, if you would like to, if the council would like to, you can, if you want to refer it to the financial committee, I think that might be acceptable.
Yes, sir.
I just feel like in everybody's interest, we need to get a resolution to this, so there's no questions out there whether it has to be done or it doesn't have to be done.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, Mr. Wells, you'll handle that?
Yeah,
Setting up.
I'll make sure it's brought up, and I'll make.
All right. Item 20, thank you. Item 20, reappoint Tangipahoa Communication District Number 1. We have a letter from Chief Polito. The Fire Chiefs Association has voted to appoint Mr. Charles Slicker and Daniel Folks to the 911 Board. Need a motion to approve that?
I so move.
I'll second.
Motion by Mr. Bruno, second by Mr. VL. Roll call, please.
That's the question.
Yes.
The communication district, that's not done by districts, it's done by the entire country.
Us.
Yes. We're just ratifying their,
Okay.
yes. All right, next we have,
Roll call.
oh, I'm sorry, roll call, please.
Mr. Forrest? Mr. Joseph?
Yes.
Mr. Bruno? Mr. Ridgel?
Yes.
Mr. Mayu? Mr. Wells?
Yeah.
Mr. Vial?
Yes.
Ms. Hyde?
Yes.
Ms. Coates?
Can you send me, their meeting days? I need to cover them.
Yes, sir.
Whenever you get a chance. Thank you.
Right. Item 21, reappoint Tangipahoa Library Board of Control. I need to reappoint Dusty Cooper. He was filling an unexpired term, so if somebody will make that motion for me.
So,
Right. Motion by Mr. Joseph, second by Mr. Forrest. Roll call, please.
Mr. Forrest? Mr. Joseph?
Yes.
Mr. Bruno? Mr. Ridgel?
Yes.
Mr. Mayu? Mr. Wells?
Yeah.
Mr. Vial?
Yes.
Ms. Hyde?
Yes.
Ms. Coates?
Okay. The next one is reappoint Tangipahoa Mosquito Abatement District. We have all.
Table.
Okay, so we're going to table these until next month. So these two.
I'm gonna let we pay it.
A motion by Mr. Wells, second by Mr. Forrest, that be tabled until the next meeting. Roll call, please.
Mr. Joseph?
yes.
Mr. Bruno? Mr. Ridgel?
Yes.
Mr. Mayu? Mr. Wells?
Yeah.
Mr. Vial?
Yes.
Ms. Hyde?
Yes.
Ms. Coates? Mr. Forrest?
All right, and the last one is reappoint the Tangipahoa, Keep Tangipahoa Beautiful Board of Commissioners. We have Ginger Tuste,
It's,
just that one?
reappointed, yeah.
Okay. Donnie Leotis, I'm not sure how to say that.
That's me. I so move to reappoint.
Have a motion by Mr. Bruno, second by
Let's go.
Ms. Coates. You- okay. Roll call, please.
Mr. Bruno? Mr. Ridgel?
Yes.
Mr. Mayu? Mr. Wells?
Yeah.
Mr. Vial?
Yes.
Ms. Hyde?
Yes.
Ms. Coates? Mr. Forrest? Mr. Joseph?
Yes.
All right. The last item is to approve proposals and name the official journal for the Tangipahoa Parish Council for a period beginning July 1st, 2021 and ending June 30th, 2022. We only have one bid from the Daily Star at $6 per 100 word square.
Also move.
I have a motion by Mr. VL, second by Ms. Coates. Roll call, please.
Mr. Ridgel?
Yes.
Mr. Mayu? Mr. Wells?
Yeah.
Mr. Vial?
Yes.
Ms. Hyde?
Yes.
Ms. Coates? Mr. Forrest? Mr. Joseph?
Yes.
Mr. Bruno?
Beer, wine, and liquor?
None.
There are none. Legal matters? Okay, Councilman's privileges?
Yes, ma'am. I have two.
Okay.
I gave each of you, say workshop announcement. And the purpose of this workshop is being hosted by Untitled Chapter 1052. And it's to help the veterans get themselves organized in the event of a tragedy. If a veteran passes away, a lot of times veterans don't know the terminology of the military, they don't know what BD-214 is. They can't find military records, they can't find this, they can't find that. We'll make it much easier on the loved ones. We can get the loved ones and the veteran come to this workshop June 24th from 10 to 12:30 at the 88 Library. I'll get tons of calls from we were all given one ticket each. And the person, the winner of that ticket, won a beautiful matted portrait of the 2021 Sicilian Festival. So Carlo and John were there, so I said, you know what, guys, it'd be a good idea to donate this portrait, this picture to the parish government, so the entire parish can share in it. It's such a beautiful picture, so we all agree. So I'd like to do that tonight, and I'd like to take a picture. I'd like to invite Jim, his wife up, the mayor, Carlo, and John and Gravity would have been with us, but he did.
And remember, he left out the important term, he won it.
Yeah, I won. I have to wait a ticket. All right. Yeah, that.
Oh, you don't represent the past.
Okay. All right.
Ready? 1, 2, 3.
All right, so I'm going to ask you to name this so John is ready. You're welcome. Yes, sir, you're welcome.
All right.
We don't get to see our mayor much up here, but I want to commend him on the excellent job in just a short time that he's been mayor. And if you pass through town, you can see a lot of the improvements that have taken place. Buildings are getting painted, we got some new businesses that have moved into town. And I guess we can announce it, Jim, you want to talk about cannons and what they're going to do down there.
Yeah, we're fixing to annex cannons and the hospital, and I was trying to get Minuteman, but he won't come in. So we're working on that now. Hopefully in a few months they'll be annexed into town. I think the hospital, I won't make anything on it, but I think it'd be a good thing to have that in our city.
And just when we talk about cannons, there's a drugstore that's just to the north of the hospital. And Mr. Cannon's been in a portable building for many, many years. He's building a brand new state-of-the-art drugstore there. And he's also going to do some apartments and stuff in the back with some property that's been vacant for a long, long time. So a lot of good things going on in Independence, and Mayor, we appreciate what you're doing, and we're always here to help you.
All right. If there are no other councilman's privileges, Mr. Wells, I'll entertain your motion.
Yeah, before I make that motion, I would just like to thank all these fine citizens for coming out tonight and participating in the political process. Thank you very much. Madam Chairman, I move that we adjourn.
It takes more than one person to assist in a personal injury claim. I am attorney Glenn Westmoreland, and we have a strong team at the Mack Law Firm. It is our goal to make sure your injury is properly attended to. Contact me at tangilawteam.com and let us get you the help you need.